The blood-curdling scream echoed through the night, piercing the stillness of Chico, California like a knife through butter. But no one came to help no one except Ryder Nichols, who heard it while passing by the abandoned Morris property on his way back from a long cattle drive. It was the summer of 1876, and the heat that had baked the land all day still radiated from the earth as darkness settled over the valley. Ryder had been driving cattle for 3 weeks straight, returning to Chico with his payment in his pocket and exhaustion in his bones. He'd planned to head straight to his small ranch outside of town, but the scream changed everything. Ryder pulled his horse to a stop, straining to hear over the steady chirp of crickets. There it was again, fainter this time, but unmistakably human. He turned his horse toward the dilapidated barn that loomed in the distance, a dark silhouette against the indigo sky. The Morris property had been abandoned for nearly 2 years, ever since old man Morris died and his sons moved east. No one had reason to be there, especially not at this hour. Ryder approached cautiously, his hand resting on the revolver at his hip. As he drew closer, he heard the unmistakable sound of metal clanking against metal. His horse whinnied nervously as they approached the barn, sensing its rider's tension. Ryder dismounted, tied his horse to a fence post, and drew his gun. The barn door creaked as he pushed it open, moonlight spilling in to illuminate a scene that made his blood run cold. A woman was chained to a post in the center of the barn, her wrists bound in heavy iron shackles that were secured to the wooden beam. Her dress was torn and dirty, her dark hair falling in tangled waves around her face. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Please help me." Ryder holstered his weapon and rushed forward. "What in God's name? Who did this to you?" The woman flinched as he approached, pressing herself against the post as far as her chains would allow. Her eyes, even in the dim light, showed a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "My name is Ryder Nichols," he said softly, trying to appear as non-threatening as possible. "I'm going to help you." "They'll be back," she said, her voice trembling. "They went to town for supplies, but they'll return by morning." "Who will? Who did this to you?" "Barton's gang. They've been using this barn as their hideout." She tugged weakly at the chains. "Please, if you're going to help me, do it now." Ryder examined the chains. They were locked with a padlock that was rusted but solid. "I'll need to find something to break these." He searched the barn, finding an old axe with a worn handle leaning against the wall. It would have to do. Returning to the woman, he positioned the blade of the axe against the chain between her wrists. "Hold as still as you can," he instructed. "I don't want to hurt you." With careful, powerful strikes, Ryder brought the axe down on the chain. It took several attempts, but finally the links gave way. The woman's hands were still bound by the manacles, but she was free from the post. "Can you walk?" Ryder asked, offering her his hand. She nodded, though she swayed slightly as she stood. "My name is Hannah," she said. "Hannah James. Miss James, we need to get as far from here as possible before Barton and his men return." "They took everything I had," Hannah said. "My father's pocket watch, my mother's locket. They're in that box by the door." Ryder hesitated but saw the determination in her eyes. He quickly retrieved the small wooden box, tucking it into his saddlebag before helping Hannah onto his horse. As they prepared to leave, an idea struck him. These men. They deserve to lose their hideout for what they've done. Hannah stared at him, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You're going to burn it down." Ryder nodded. "It's the only way to ensure they don't come after you. They won't know who helped you escape, but they'll think twice about returning here." He gathered hay and old rags, placing them strategically around the barn. Using matches from his pocket, he set the piles alight. The dry wood and hay caught quickly, flames spreading with hungry eagerness. Mounting his horse behind Hannah, Ryder urged the animal forward, away from the barn that was now engulfed in flames. The fire blazed behind them, casting long shadows as they rode into the night. "Where can I take you?" Ryder asked, his arms on either side of Hannah as he held the reins. "I have nowhere to go," Hannah admitted, her voice barely audible over the sound of hoofbeats. "They killed my father 3 days ago. Our farm is probably already claimed by someone else." Ryder felt her tremble against him. "I have a small place outside of town. It's nothing fancy, but you'll be safe there until we figure out what to do next." Hannah didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was heavy with exhaustion and grief. "Thank you, Mr. Nichols. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "There's no debt between us," Ryder assured her. "Just rest now. We have a bit of riding ahead." As they rode through the darkness, leaving the burning barn behind them, neither could have predicted how their lives would intertwine in the coming days, weeks, and months. For now, it was enough that Hannah was free and that they were both alive, heading toward safety as the first light of dawn began to brighten the eastern sky. The ride to Ryder's ranch took nearly an hour, with Hannah drifting in and out of consciousness, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion now that she was safe. Ryder kept one arm securely around her waist, ensuring she didn't fall as his horse picked its way along the trail in the growing morning light. His ranch came into view as the sun crested the distant mountains, a modest cabin with a small barn and corral, nestled in a clearing surrounded by oak trees. It wasn't much compared to some of the larger spreads in the area, but it was his, built with his own hands after years of working for others. "Miss James," he said gently, rousing her, "we're here." Hannah opened her eyes, taking in her surroundings with wary confusion before memory returned. "This is your home." "It is." Ryder dismounted and helped Hannah down, steadying her when her legs threatened to give way. "Let's get you inside." The cabin was simple but clean, with a main room that served as kitchen and living area, and a small bedroom partitioned off at the back. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs stood in the center of the room. "You can take the bed," Ryder said, leading her to the small bedroom. "I'll sleep out here." Hannah looked at him with uncertainty, still wearing the shackles on her wrists. "The chains. I'll take care of those as soon as you've rested." He pulled a clean shirt from a trunk and handed it to her. "You can change into this. I'll bring you some water to clean up." While Hannah changed, Ryder heated water over the fireplace and rummaged through a wooden chest for tools that might help with the manacles. When he returned to the bedroom door, he knocked gently. "Miss James, may I come in?" "Yes," came the soft reply. Hannah sat on the edge of the bed, Ryder's shirt hanging loosely on her thin frame. Her face, now visible in the morning light, bore a bruise on one cheek, and her eyes were sunken with exhaustion and hunger. The iron manacles looked even more barbaric against her delicate wrists. Ryder set down the basin of water and a cloth. "I brought some tools that might help with those chains." He worked carefully, using a file to wear down the pins in the locks. It was slow work, but after nearly half an hour, the first manacle fell open. Hannah gasped as it came free, revealing raw, blistered skin beneath. "I'm sorry," Ryder said, gently cleaning the wound with the damp cloth. "I'll be as careful as I can with the other one." Hannah watched him work, her face a mixture of pain and gratitude. "Why are you helping me, Mr. Nichols? You don't know me." Ryder continued filing at the second manacle. "Where I come from, you help folks in need. Doesn't matter if you know them or not." "And where is that?" "Missouri originally. Came out west after the war." The second manacle finally gave way and Ryder removed it carefully. "There, that's better." Hannah rubbed her wrists gingerly, wincing at the pain. "Thank you. You should rest now, Ryder said, standing. I'll prepare some food for when you wake up. Hannah nodded, her eyelids already growing heavy. Mr. Nichols, they'll come looking for me. Let them try, Ryder said, his voice hardening. You're safe here, Miss James, I promise you that. As Hannah drifted into sleep, Ryder returned to the main room, his mind racing. He knew of Barton's gang, violent men who had been terrorizing the area for months, robbing stage coaches and isolated farms. The law had been unable to catch them, and now they had escalated to kidnapping and murder. He stoked the fire and prepared a simple stew with dried meat and vegetables. As it simmered, he cleaned his rifle and revolver, checking the ammunition. If Barton's men came looking for Hannah, they would find Ryder Nichols ready. Hannah slept through the day and into the evening. When she finally emerged from the bedroom, her face was pale but her eyes were clearer. "How long have I been asleep?" she asked, wrapping her arms around herself. "Nearly 12 hours, Ryder answered, rising from his chair by the fire. "You needed it. Are you hungry?" Hannah nodded, and Ryder guided her to the table, serving her a bowl of the reheated stew. She ate slowly at first, then with increasing urgency as her body demanded nourishment. "This is good," she said between bites. "I haven't eaten I'm not sure how long." "Take it slow," Ryder advised. "Your stomach needs to adjust." As Hannah ate, Ryder studied her more carefully. She was young, perhaps 22 or 23, with features that would be striking once the bruises healed, and proper nourishment returned color to her face. Her hands, despite the abuse they had suffered, showed signs of being well cared for before her ordeal, the hands of someone who had worked but hadn't known true hardship until recently. "Tell me what happened," Ryder said gently when Hannah had finished eating. "How did you end up in that barn?" Hannah's fingers tightened around her empty bowl. "My father and I had a small farm near Red Bluff. We were doing well enough, not rich, but comfortable. 3 days ago, Barton and his men came. They said they needed a place to hide, that the law was after them." She paused, her voice catching. "My father refused them. He tried to fight, but there were 5 of them. They shot him in front of me." Ryder's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, letting her continue. "They took me with them, said I would fetch a good price in certain establishments in San Francisco." Hannah's voice was steady now, though her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "They stopped at that abandoned barn for the night. When I tried to escape, they chained me there like an animal. They left yesterday to get supplies in town, saying they'd return by morning." "And that's when I heard you," Ryder finished for her. Hannah nodded. "If you hadn't come when you did." She couldn't finish the thought. "But I did," Ryder said firmly. "And now you're safe." "For how long?" Hannah asked. "They'll be looking for me, and I have nowhere to go, no family left." Ryder considered her words. "You can stay here as long as you need to. We'll figure out the rest as we go." Hannah looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Ryder said simply. "And because no one deserves to be treated the way you were." A ghost of a smile touched Hannah's lips. "Thank you, Mr. Nichols." "Ryder," he corrected. "If you're going to be staying here for a while, you might as well call me Ryder." "Ryder," Hannah repeated, the name feeling strange on her tongue. "Then you must call me Hannah." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows of the cabin. Inside, a fragile trust was forming between 2 strangers brought together by violence, and compassion, a trust that would be tested in the days to come as Barton's gang searched for the woman who had escaped them and the man who had helped her. The next morning, Ryder woke at dawn, as was his habit. He moved quietly, not wanting to disturb Hannah, who was still sleeping in his bed. He rekindled the fire, put coffee on to boil, and stepped outside to tend to his horse and the few cattle he kept on his small spread. The morning air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of pine and earth. Ryder breathed deeply, trying to clear his mind. The events of the previous night seemed almost dreamlike in the clear light of day, but the reality of the situation was undeniable. He had a woman staying in his home, a woman being hunted by dangerous men. When he returned to the cabin, Hannah was awake, attempting to tidy the already neat living area. "You don't need to do that," Ryder said, setting down an armful of firewood. Hannah turned, a hint of color in her cheeks. "I want to be useful. I can't just sit idle while you provide for me." Ryder nodded, understanding her need for normalcy and purpose. "There's coffee on the stove. I thought we might ride into town later to get you some proper clothes and see what news there might be about Barton's gang. Is that safe?" Hannah asked, her hands instinctively going to her bruised wrists. "Probably not," Ryder admitted. "But we can't hide forever and I need supplies. Besides, the sooner we learn what they're doing, the better prepared we'll be." After a simple breakfast, Ryder found a hat and a coat that Hannah could wear to partially disguise herself. The coat was much too large, but it served its purpose. They rode double on Ryder's horse, Hannah sitting behind him this time, her arms wrapped loosely around his waist. The town of Chico was bustling when they arrived. Founded as a trading post and later established as a proper town, when the California and Oregon Railroad came through, Chico had grown into a respectable settlement with a main street lined with businesses, a general store, a hotel, saloons, and various other establishments serving the needs of locals and travelers alike. Ryder tied his horse outside the general store and helped Hannah down. "Stay close to me," he murmured, "and keep that hat pulled low." Inside the store, Ryder greeted the proprietor, Samuel Wilson, with a nod. "Morning, Sam. I need some supplies and the lady needs a few things as well." Sam's eyebrows rose slightly at the sight of Hannah in Ryder's oversized coat, but he asked no questions. "What can I help you with today?" While Hannah selected a simple dress, undergarments, and other necessities with the help of Sam's wife, Ryder gathered food and ammunition. He kept his ears open, listening to the conversations around him. "Burned to the ground, nothing left but ashes," one man was saying to another by the counter. "Any idea who did it?" asked his companion. "Sheriff thinks it was Barton's gang themselves, covering their tracks. They've been seen heading north toward Red Bluff." Ryder felt a surge of relief. If Barton's men were heading north away from Chico, it would give him and Hannah some breathing room. As they completed their purchases, the door to the general store opened, and Sheriff Thomas Collins stepped inside. He was a tall man with a weathered face and sharp eyes that didn't miss much. Those eyes landed on Ryder and narrowed slightly. "Nichols," he said with a nod. "Heard you just got back from a cattle drive." "Yesterday," Ryder confirmed, keeping his voice casual. The sheriff's gaze shifted to Hannah, who kept her head down. "And who might this be?" Ryder had anticipated this question. "This is my cousin, Hannah. She's visiting from back east." The sheriff's eyes lingered on Hannah for a moment longer before returning to Ryder. "Interesting timing." "You hear about the Morris barn burning down last night?" "Can't say that I have," Ryder replied evenly. "Trouble?" "Could be. Some travelers reported seeing flames. By the time we got there, it was nothing but cinders." The sheriff leaned closer. "Word is Barton's gang had been using it as a hideout." "Is that so?" Ryder kept his expression neutral. "Well, good riddance then. Those men have caused enough trouble around here." Sheriff Collins studied Ryder's face. "Indeed they have. They're also missing something they stole. Something valuable they might come looking for." Hannah stiffened beside Ryder, but he placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "If I hear anything, Sheriff, you'll be the first to know." The sheriff nodded slowly. See that I am. Good day to you, Nichols, madam." As the sheriff left the store, Ryder quickly paid for their purchases and guided Hannah outside. They mounted his horse and rode away, not speaking until they were well out of town. "He knows," Hannah said, her voice tight with fear. "He knows who I am." "He suspects," Ryder corrected. "But he doesn't have proof. And from what I overheard, Barton's gang is heading away from here. That gives us time." Time for what? Ryder didn't immediately answer. The truth was, he hadn't thought that far ahead. His instinct had been to help Hannah to keep her safe. What came next was less clear. "Time to make a plan," he finally said. "Time for your wounds to heal. Time for you to decide what you want to do next." Hannah was silent for several moments, her arms still around Ryder's waist as they rode. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible over the sound of hoofbeats. "I have nowhere to go, Ryder. No family, no home. Everything I had was taken from me." Ryder felt a tightness in his chest at her words. "You have a place with me for as long as you need it. I promise you that." As they rode back to Ryder's ranch, neither spoke of the connection growing between them, a connection forged in danger and nurtured by shared solitude. Neither could have predicted how that connection would deepen in the days to come, or the challenges they would face together. The next week passed in a strange, peaceful rhythm. Hannah recovered her strength, the color returning to her face and the raw marks on her wrists beginning to heal. She insisted on helping with the daily chores, cooking meals, tending the small vegetable garden, and even learning to milk the single cow Ryder kept for fresh milk and butter. Ryder found himself watching her when she wasn't looking, the way she hummed softly while kneading bread dough, how she talked to the chickens as she gathered eggs, the sunlight catching in her dark hair as she hung laundry to dry. She was bringing life to his solitary existence in a way he hadn't expected or known he needed. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Hannah broke the comfortable silence between them. "Tell me about yourself, Ryder." "You know my story, but I know very little about you." Ryder leaned back in his chair, considering her request. "Not much to tell. I grew up in Missouri, fought for the Union in the war, came west afterward like so many others looking for a fresh start." "Family?" Hannah asked. "Lost my parents to typhoid when I was 17. No siblings. Had an uncle who took me in until I was old enough to enlist." Ryder paused, memories washing over him. "After the war, I couldn't go back. Too many ghosts. So I drifted west, worked cattle drives, saved enough to buy this place 3 years ago." Hannah studied his profile, strong and weathered by sun and wind. "And you've been alone all this time?" A faint smile touched Ryder's lips. "I've had my share of companionship. Just never found anyone I wanted to stay with for good." "And now?" Hannah asked, her voice soft. Ryder turned to look at her, their eyes meeting in the fading light. Something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of the growing feelings neither was ready to name. Before Ryder could respond, the sound of approaching horses broke the moment. He was on his feet instantly, hand going to the revolver at his hip. "Get inside," he said quietly to Hannah, "and stay away from the windows." Hannah obeyed without question, slipping inside the cabin as Ryder stepped off the porch, positioning himself in the yard to meet whoever was coming. 2 riders appeared from the tree line, Sheriff Collins and his deputy, Jim Parker. Ryder relaxed slightly but remained vigilant. "Evening, Sheriff," he called as the men approached. "What brings you out this way?" The sheriff dismounted, his expression grim. "Information, Nichols. Barton's gang was spotted heading back this way. Seems they lost something valuable and are mighty determined to get it back." Ryder kept his face impassive. "Is that so?" "It is." The sheriff looked toward the cabin. "Your cousin around?" She's inside, resting, been feeling poorly. Ryder crossed his arms. Something specific you need from me, Sheriff. Collins stepped closer, lowering his voice. Look, Nichols, I'm not a fool. That woman isn't your cousin. The timing of her arrival right after a woman reportedly escaped from Barton's gang is too convenient. You accusing me of something? Ryder asked, his tone hardening. I'm trying to help you, damn it, the sheriff hissed. Barton's men killed 2 people in Red Bluff yesterday. They're asking questions about a young woman and the man who might be helping her. It's only a matter of time before someone points them in your direction. Ryder's jaw tightened. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you get her out of here. Take her somewhere safe, far from Chico. The sheriff glanced at his deputy, who was waiting with the horses. I can give you a day's head start before I officially hear about your possible involvement. Ryder studied the sheriff's face, looking for any sign of deception. Why would you help us? Because I've been chasing Barton for months without success. Maybe this woman is the key to finally bringing him down. Collins paused. And because I've known you for 3 years, Nichols. You're a good man. Whatever you did, I suspect you had your reasons. After a moment's consideration, Ryder nodded. I appreciate the warning, Sheriff. Don't make me regret it, Collins replied. And if you do manage to stay ahead of Barton, I expect the full story someday. As the sheriff and his deputy rode away, Ryder returned to the cabin, his mind racing with plans and possibilities. Hannah was waiting just inside the door, her face pale with worry. We have to leave, don't we? She asked, already knowing the answer. Yes, Ryder confirmed. Barton's men are coming back this way. The sheriff believes they'll find us soon. Hannah sank into a chair, her hands trembling slightly. This is my fault. I've brought this danger to your door. Ryder knelt before her, taking her hands in his. No. The only ones at fault are Barton and his gang. You're a victim, Hannah, not the cause. Where will we go? I have a friend in Nevada runs a ranch near Virginia City. We'll head there, stay until it's safe. Ryder squeezed her hands gently. Pack only what you need. We leave at first light. As Hannah went to gather her few belongings, Ryder began his own preparations. He collected food, ammunition, and money he kept hidden beneath a floorboard. By the time he finished, night had fallen completely, wrapping the cabin in darkness broken only by the glow of the fireplace. Hannah emerged from the bedroom, her borrowed dress replaced by the new one purchased in town, her hair neatly braided down her back. In the firelight, with determination replacing fear in her eyes, she looked different, stronger, more resolute. I won't be a burden to you, Ryder, she said firmly. I know how to shoot, how to ride. My father made sure of that. Ryder nodded, a new respect joining the other feelings he harbored for her. We'll face whatever comes together then. They spent the rest of the evening preparing for their journey, speaking little but moving in a harmony that belied their short acquaintance. As they worked side by side, the connection between them deepened, forged not just by shared danger but by mutual respect and growing affection. When at last they retired for the night, Ryder to his bedroll by the fire and Hannah to the bedroom, both knew that whatever happened in the days to come, they would face it not as strangers brought together by chance, but as companions bound by choice. Dawn broke with a clarity that seemed to mock the urgency of their situation. Ryder had been awake for hours, checking and rechecking their preparations. They would need to travel light and fast, which meant taking only the essentials, and his 2 best horses, his own chestnut gelding, and a sturdy black mare he kept as a backup. Hannah emerged from the bedroom just as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the windows. She wore the practical dress they had purchased in town, with Ryder's spare coat over it for warmth. Her hair was pulled back in a simple braid, and her expression was determined despite the shadow of fear in her eyes. I'm ready, she said simply. Ryder nodded, impressed by her composure. We'll eat something quick, and then be on our way. They shared a meal of bread and jerky, neither speaking much as they prepared for what lay ahead. When they finished, Ryder loaded their supplies onto the horses while Hannah took one last look around the cabin that had been her sanctuary for the past week. "I'm sorry you have to leave your home because of me," she said as Ryder helped her mount the black mare. "It's not goodbye forever," Ryder replied, adjusting her stirrups. "Just until this is over." "And if it's never over?" Hannah asked, voicing the fear that had haunted her. Ryder looked up at her, his eyes serious. "Then we'll make a new home somewhere else, together." The word hung between them, full of meaning and promise. Hannah reached down and touched his hand briefly, a gesture of gratitude and something more that neither was ready to name. They rode east, avoiding the main trails and keeping to the less traveled paths that Ryder knew from his years of exploring the area. Their plan was to circle north of Chico and then head east toward the Sierra Nevada mountains, eventually crossing into Nevada territory. By midday, they had put considerable distance between themselves and Ryder's ranch. They stopped in a small clearing by a stream to rest the horses and eat a cold lunch. "How far to Virginia City?" Hannah asked, stretching her legs after hours in the saddle. 3 days if we push hard," Ryder answered, filling their canteens from the stream. "Maybe 4 if we need to take it slower." Hannah nodded, her face showing no complaint despite what must have been discomfort for someone unaccustomed to long rides. "Tell me about your friend there." "His name is William Cooper. We served together in the war. He came west before I did, made a good life for himself ranching. He's a good man, trustworthy." Ryder handed her a filled canteen. "He'll help us without asking too many questions. And after we get there, what then?" Ryder sat beside her on a fallen log. "That depends. If Barton's gang is caught, you could go back to Red Bluff, claim your father's property." Hannah shook her head. "I have no desire to go back there, too many memories." She turned to look at him. "What about you? Will you return to your ranch?" "I don't know," Ryder admitted. "I've never been one to put down deep roots. The ranch was just a place to rest for a while." They fell silent, each contemplating a future that had become uncertain. The quiet was broken by the distant sound of a twig snapping. Ryder was on his feet instantly, hand on his revolver. "Get to the horses," he whispered to Hannah. Quietly. They moved swiftly, mounting their horses and urging them deeper into the woods, away from the trail. They rode in tense silence for nearly an hour before Ryder felt confident enough to slow their pace. "Probably just a deer," he said, though his vigilant posture suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "Or someone following us," Hannah replied, her voice steady despite her fear. Ryder glanced at her, impressed again by her resilience. "If it was Barton's men, they would have come after us by now, but we'll keep a sharper watch." They continued their journey, more cautious now, stopping only when necessary and making cold camps at night to avoid the telltale glow of a fire. On the second night, as they huddled under a shared blanket for warmth, Hannah spoke of her life before Barton's gang had destroyed it. "My mother died when I was 16, she said, her voice soft in the darkness. "It was just my father and me after that. He taught me everything: how to run the farm, how to negotiate with buyers, how to protect myself. He wanted me to be independent, said a woman in this world needs to stand on her own 2 feet. "He sounds like a wise man," Ryder commented. Hannah nodded, her head resting against Ryder's shoulder. He would have liked you. You think so, I know so. He valued honesty and courage above all else." Hannah paused, then added quietly, "I see those qualities in you." Ryder didn't respond immediately, moved by her words and the trust they implied. When he did speak, His voice was rougher than usual. "Try to get some sleep. We've got another long day tomorrow." Hannah closed her eyes, the warmth of Ryder's body beside hers more comforting than she would have thought possible a week ago. Just before sleep claimed her, she felt his arm tighten slightly around her shoulders, protective even in rest. The third day of their journey brought them to the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. The terrain became more challenging, with steeper slopes and narrower paths. Ryder led the way, occasionally glancing back to ensure Hannah was managing the difficult trail. "We'll stop at a trading post I know," Ryder said as they paused to rest the horses. "It's run by an old mountain man named Jeremiah. He'll have news of the trails ahead and maybe word of Barton's gang." The trading post was a sturdy log structure nestled in a small valley, smoke rising from its chimney in a thin, welcoming plume. As they approached, an old man with a wild white beard emerged from the doorway, a rifle held casually in his gnarled hands. "Well, I'll be damned," the old man called. "Ryder Nichols, as I live and breathe." "Hello, Jeremiah," Ryder replied, dismounting and extending his hand to the old trapper. "It's been a while. 2 years at least." Jeremiah's sharp eyes moved to Hannah, who remained on her horse. "And who might this lovely lady be?" "This is Hannah James," Ryder said, helping her dismount. "Hannah, this is Jeremiah Baker, the orneriest old cuss in these mountains." Jeremiah cackled with delight. "And proud of it, too. Come inside, both of you. You look like you could use a hot meal and some rest." The interior of the trading post was cluttered but clean, with pelts and supplies hanging from the rafters and shelves lined with goods for travelers and trappers. A large fireplace dominated one wall, a pot of something aromatic simmering over the flames. As they shared a meal of rabbit stew and cornbread, Ryder cautiously asked about news from Chico. "Funny you should ask," Jeremiah said, stroking his beard. "Had a couple of rough-looking fellers come through yesterday, asking about a man and woman traveling together. Didn't like the look of them, so I played dumb." He fixed Ryder with a knowing look. "You in some kind of trouble, son." Ryder and Hannah exchanged glances. "Did these men mention any names?" "Nope, but one had a nasty scar across his cheek, and the other was missing 2 fingers on his left hand." Hannah paled. "That's them. Barton's men, Luke with the scar and Jasper with the missing fingers." Jeremiah's expression grew serious. "Well now, that's interesting. Barton's got quite a reputation. Want to tell me what you've done to earn his attention?" Briefly, Ryder explained their situation, omitting certain details but making it clear that Hannah had been kidnapped and that he had helped her escape. The old trapper listened without interruption, nodding occasionally. When Ryder finished, Jeremiah leaned back in his chair. "Well, you've stepped in it this time, boy. Barton's not one to let go of a grudge." "We're heading to William Cooper's ranch near Virginia City," Ryder said. "Are the passes clear?" "Should be this time of year, but you won't be making it there tonight." Jeremiah stood, collecting their empty bowls. "You'll stay here. Got a small room in the back where the lady can sleep. You can take the loft, Ryder." "We don't want to put you at risk," Hannah protested. Jeremiah waved a dismissive hand. "Been in these mountains for 30 years, girl. Risk is an old friend of mine. Besides, those men are headed south. Told them I saw a couple matching your description heading that way." Relief washed over both Hannah and Ryder. "Thank you," Hannah said sincerely. "Don't mention it. Now get some rest. You've got a hard ride ahead tomorrow if you want to make it through the pass before dark." That night, for the first time since fleeing Ryder's ranch, they slept in separate rooms. Hannah found herself missing the warmth and security of Ryder's presence beside her. In the small back room of Jeremiah's trading post, surrounded by pelts and supplies, she lay awake thinking about the man who had risked everything to save her and continued to risk himself to keep her safe. She had known him for only 10 days, yet he had become the center of her world, her protector, her companion, and increasingly, something more. The feelings growing within her were both frightening and exhilarating, a bright spot in the darkness that had engulfed her life. In the loft above the main room, Ryder too found sleep elusive. His thoughts were filled with Hannah, her courage, her resilience, her quiet strength. He had acted on instinct when he freed her from those chains, never considering the consequences. Now, he couldn't imagine having done anything differently. Whatever dangers lay ahead, he knew with absolute certainty that he would face them willingly to keep her safe. With these thoughts circling in their minds, Hannah and Ryder eventually drifted into sleep, their dreams intertwining just as their lives had begun to do. Morning came with a chill in the air, and the promise of clear skies, perfect conditions for crossing the mountain pass. Jeremiah provided them with fresh supplies and a hand-drawn map showing the best route to Virginia City. "Stick to this trail," he instructed, tracing a line on the crude map. "It's steeper in places but less traveled, less chance of running into unwanted company." As they prepared to depart, the old trapper pulled Ryder aside. "That girl's something special," he said quietly. "I see the way you look at her." Ryder didn't deny it. "She is." "Then don't waste time dancing around what's growing between you. Life's too short, especially out here." Jeremiah clapped him on the shoulder. "Now get going and send word when you're safely settled." They set off as the sun cleared the eastern mountains, the trail immediately beginning to climb. The air grew thinner as they ascended, the views more spectacular. By midday, they had reached a plateau that offered a stunning panorama of the valley below and the distant peaks ahead. "It's beautiful," Hannah breathed, reining her horse to a stop beside Ryder's. "I've never seen anything like it." Ryder watched her face as she took in the vista, struck by how the sunlight illuminated her features and the wonder in her eyes. "Neither have I," he said softly, though he wasn't looking at the scenery. Hannah turned and caught his gaze, a blush rising to her cheeks as she realized the meaning behind his words. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the mountain air charged with unspoken emotions. The spell was broken by the distant echo of a gunshot, followed quickly by another. Ryder's head snapped around, scanning the trail behind them. "Riders," he said tersely, pointing to a cloud of dust on the path below. "At least 3 moving fast." Hannah's hand flew to her mouth. "Barton's men, possibly. Either way, we can't take chances." Ryder studied the trail ahead. "We need to keep moving, try to reach the pass before they catch up." They urged their horses forward at a quicker pace, the animals picking their way carefully over the increasingly rocky terrain. The trail narrowed as it wound around the mountain, in some places barely wide enough for a single horse. "Stay close to the mountainside," Ryder called back to Hannah. "Don't look down." The drop to their right was indeed dizzying, hundreds of feet of sheer cliff face. Hannah focused on Ryder's back and her horse's ears, trusting the sure-footed mare to follow Ryder's gelding safely. They had nearly reached the highest point of the pass when Ryder suddenly raised his hand, signaling a halt. "Listen," he whispered. Hannah strained her ears and heard the sound of hoofbeats on stone coming from ahead of them. "They've split up," Ryder realized aloud. "Some came up the other side to cut us off." Hannah felt fear clutch at her heart. "What do we do?" Ryder scanned their surroundings, searching for options. His eyes settled on a narrow path branching off from the main trail, barely visible among the rocks and scrub pine. "There," he decided. "That game trail might lead to somewhere we can defend or hide." They turned their horses onto the smaller path, which immediately began to descend at a steep angle. The going was slow and treacherous, with loose stones sometimes sliding beneath their horses' hooves. After about half a mile, the trail opened into a small, sheltered meadow with a clear spring at one end and a backdrop of steep rock walls on three sides. The only way in or out was the path they had just traveled. "We'll make our stand here," Ryder said, dismounting and helping Hannah down. "Get the horses to the far end, by the spring." As Hannah led the animals away, Ryder unpacked their rifles and checked the ammunition. They had 2 rifles, Ryder's revolver, and about 50 rounds between them, not enough for a prolonged firefight, but perhaps sufficient to hold off their pursuers long enough to negotiate or find another way out. Hannah returned, her face set with determination. "Give me one of the rifles." "I told you I know how to shoot." Ryder handed her the Winchester without hesitation. "Find a position with good cover and a clear view of the trail. Don't fire until I give the word." They took up positions behind large boulders near the entrance to the meadow, weapons ready, waiting. The minutes stretched into an hour with no sign of pursuit. "Maybe we lost them," Hannah whispered hopefully. "Maybe," Ryder agreed, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. As if on cue, a voice called from the trail above. "Nichols, we know you're down there with the girl. Come out and maybe we won't kill you." Ryder recognized the voice Luke, the scarred man Jeremiah had described. "What do you want?" he shouted back. "Just the girl. She's Barton's property. Give her up and you can ride away." Hannah's knuckles turned white as she gripped her rifle tighter. "I am no one's property," she said, her voice low and fierce. "You'll have to come and get her," Ryder called in response. "And I guarantee some of you won't be riding back out." Laughter echoed down the trail. "Have it your way, Nichols. You've got 5 minutes to change your mind, then we're coming in." Ryder turned to Hannah. "How good are you with that rifle, really?" "Good enough to hit a man at this range," she replied steadily. Ryder nodded. "Then we each take one side of the trail. When they come, aim for the horses first. Unhorsed men are easier targets and less likely to charge." Hannah moved to the opposite side of the trail entrance, positioning herself behind a boulder that offered both cover and a clear line of fire. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were surprisingly steady as she sighted along the rifle barrel. The 5 minutes passed in tense silence. Then came the sound of horses moving slowly down the trail. Ryder caught Hannah's eye and raised 3 fingers, counting down silently. 3, 2, 1. The first rider appeared at the bend in the trail, and both Ryder and Hannah fired simultaneously. The man tumbled from his saddle with a cry of pain, his horse rearing in panic. A second rider appeared, firing wildly as he tried to control his frightened mount. Hannah's second shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around but not unseating him. Gunfire erupted from the trail above as the remaining men took cover and began shooting down into the meadow. Bullets thudded into the boulders protecting Ryder and Hannah, sending chips of stone flying. "Hold your position," Ryder shouted over the noise. "Make every shot count." For what seemed like hours but was perhaps only 20 minutes, they exchanged fire with the men on the trail. 2 of Barton's gang lay motionless on the path, and at least 1 more had been wounded, judging by the cries of pain. During a lull in the shooting, Ryder checked their ammunition. "We're down to about 20 rounds between us," he told Hannah grimly. Before she could respond, a new voice called from above, deeper, more authoritative than the others. "Enough of this. Nichols, you're outgunned and surrounded. I'm coming down to talk terms." Hannah's eyes widened. "That's Barton himself," she whispered, fear evident in her voice for the first time since the shooting began. Ryder's jaw tightened. "Stay down and keep your rifle ready. Don't trust anything he says." A large man appeared on the trail, leading his horse carefully down the steep path. He was older than his men, perhaps in his 50s, with iron-gray hair and a face weathered by sun and violence. He stopped just beyond rifle range, keeping his hands visible. "That's close enough," Ryder called. Barton nodded, making no move to come closer. "You've put up quite a fight, Nichols." "Killed 2 of my best men. And I'll kill more if you don't turn around and ride away," Ryder replied evenly. Barton laughed, a sound without humor. "Bold words for a man running low on ammunition. Yes, we heard you talking." He shifted his gaze, scanning the boulders until he spotted Hannah. "There you are, girl. You've caused me a great deal of trouble." "The only trouble here is what you brought on yourself," Hannah called back, her voice surprisingly strong. "You murdered my father and kidnapped me. You're going to hang for that." "Perhaps," Barton acknowledged with a shrug. "But not today. Today I'm offering you both a chance to live. The girl comes with me and you, Nichols, ride away. Simple as that." Ryder's response was immediate and firm. "Not happening. Hannah stays with me." Barton studied him for a moment, then smiled coldly. "Ah, I see. You've developed feelings for her. How touching." He shook his head. "Love makes men foolish, Nichols. She's not worth dying for." "Yes, she is," Ryder said quietly, more to himself than to Barton. Hannah heard him, though, and felt a surge of emotion so powerful it momentarily took her breath away. In that moment, surrounded by danger and facing almost certain death, she realized with perfect clarity that she loved this man who had risked everything for her, loved him with a depth and certainty that transcended their brief acquaintance. "I'm growing impatient," Barton called. "You have 1 minute to send the girl out or we rush your position. There are 5 of us left, Nichols. You can't stop us all." Ryder turned to Hannah, his expression resolute. "When I give the signal, run for the horses. Get on and ride back up the trail as fast as you can." "What? No." "I won't leave you," Hannah protested. "You must. I'll cover your escape." "And then what? Die here alone?" Hannah shook her head vehemently. "No, we stay together. Whatever happens, we face it together." Ryder opened his mouth to argue further, but was interrupted by a new sound: multiple gunshots from the trail above, followed by shouts of alarm and confusion. Barton spun around, drawing his pistol. "What the hell?" More gunfire erupted, and one of Barton's men tumbled from the trail, landing with a sickening thud on the rocks below. Barton fired twice up the trail, then turned and ran for his horse. "It's the law," someone shouted from above. "Drop your weapons." Relief flooded through Ryder as he recognized the voice. "Sheriff Collins," he called, "down here." "We're pinned down." The sheriff appeared at the bend in the trail, rifle raised. "Hold your fire, Nichols. We've got this under control." Barton, now mounted, spurred his horse forward, attempting to charge past Ryder's position. Without hesitation, Ryder stepped into the open and fired, catching Barton squarely in the chest. The outlaw swayed in the saddle for a moment, a look of surprise on his face before toppling to the ground. The remaining members of Barton's gang, seeing their leader fall, quickly surrendered to the sheriff and his deputies. As the law officers secured the prisoners, Sheriff Collins made his way down to where Ryder and Hannah stood. "Cutting it a bit close, weren't you?" Ryder remarked, though his relief was evident in his voice. Collins smirked. "You're welcome, Nichols." He glanced at Hannah. "Miss James, I presume. I've been wanting to meet you properly." Hannah stepped forward, her rifle still in her hands. "How did you find us?" "Old Jeremiah sent word that Barton's gang was closing in on you. Figured you could use some assistance." The sheriff looked at the bodies strewn along the trail. "Though it seems you were holding your own quite admirably." Ryder holstered his revolver. "What happens now?" Now we take these scum back to stand trial for their crimes." Collins regarded them thoughtfully. "As for you two, that depends. Miss James, your testimony will be needed against the surviving members of the gang." Hannah nodded. "I'll testify. They need to pay for what they did to my father and to me." "And after that?" Ryder asked, his eyes on Hannah rather than the sheriff. Collins smiled slightly, not missing the look that passed between them. "After that, I suppose that's for you two to decide." As the sheriff turned to help his deputies with the prisoners, Ryder and Hannah stood side by side, the danger past but the future uncertain. Without speaking, Ryder reached for Hannah's hand, and she laced her fingers through his, the simple gesture conveying what words could not yet express. They returned to Chico with the sheriff's posse, the journey back much less fraught than their flight had been. Hannah provided her formal statement about the kidnapping and her father's murder, and the surviving members of Barton's gang were jailed to await trial. In the weeks that followed, Hannah stayed at the hotel in town while Ryder returned to his ranch to assess what needed repair after his abrupt departure. They saw each other daily, their connection deepening even as they both recognized the need to move slowly, to build on the foundation that had been laid in crisis but needed peace to truly flourish. 1 month after the confrontation in the mountains, with the first members of Barton's gang already convicted and sentenced to hang, Ryder rode into town with purpose in his heart. He found Hannah sitting on the hotel porch, reading a book in the late afternoon sun. "Ride with me?" he asked, extending his hand. Hannah accepted without hesitation, setting aside her book and allowing him to help her onto his horse. They rode in comfortable silence, Hannah's arms around Ryder's waist, until they reached a familiar destination, the charred remains of the Morris barn where Ryder had found her chained like an animal that fateful night. "Why did you bring me here?" Hannah asked softly as they dismounted. Ryder took her hands in his. "Because this is where our story began, and I wanted this to be where a new chapter starts." Understanding dawned in Hannah's eyes as Ryder dropped to one knee before her, still holding her hands. "Hannah James, I know we've only known each other for a short time, but I feel like I've been waiting my whole life to find you. You are the bravest, strongest woman I've ever met, and I would be honored if you would agree to be my wife." Tears welled in Hannah's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Ryder Nichols, I will marry you." Ryder stood and pulled her into his arms, sealing their engagement with a kiss that held all the promise of their future together. When they parted, both were smiling, their faces illuminated by the setting sun that bathed the ruins of the barn in golden light. "I want to rebuild my ranch," Ryder said as they mounted his horse for the ride back to town. "Make it a proper home for us. Would you like that?" Hannah leaned her head against his shoulder. "I would like that very much. A new beginning built on our own terms." "No chains, no fear," Ryder promised. "Just freedom and love." "Freedom and love," Hannah repeated, the words a vow and a blessing. They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the town church, with Sheriff Collins standing as Ryder's best man and Mrs. Wilson, the general store owner's wife, attending Hannah. The entire town turned out to celebrate, many having followed the story of Barton's defeat and the couple's unlikely romance. As summer turned to autumn, Ryder and Hannah worked side by side to expand and improve the ranch. The small cabin became a proper house with additional rooms for the family they hoped to have someday. The herd grew, as did the vegetable garden that Hannah tended with care. On the 1-year anniversary of the day Ryder had broken Hannah's chains and burned the barn, they stood on the porch of their home, watching the sunset. Hannah's hand rested on her slightly rounded belly, evidence of the new life growing within her. "Happy?" Ryder asked, his arm around her shoulders. Hannah looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the love that had grown and deepened over the past year. "More than I ever thought possible." As the last light of day painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, they shared a kiss that spoke of promises kept and dreams fulfilled. From the ashes of violence and fear, they had forged a love as enduring as the land they now called home, a love born in the Wild West, where a cowboy had broken chains and burned a barn to save a woman who would become his heart, his future, his everything. In the years that followed, Ryder and Hannah Nichols built a life rich with love and purpose. Their first child, a son they named Robert after Hannah's father, arrived in the spring of 1878, bringing joy and new purpose to their lives. A daughter, Margaret, followed 2 years later, completing their family. The Nichols Ranch prospered under their joint care, expanding to become one of the most successful operations in the Chico area. Ryder's knowledge of cattle and Hannah's head for business proved to be a formidable combination. They hired hands to help with the growing herd, building bunkhouses and a larger barn to accommodate their expanding operation. Sheriff Collins, who had become a close friend, retired after 10 years of service but remained in Chico, often visiting the Nichols family for Sunday dinners. He took particular delight in teaching young Robert and Margaret to ride and shoot, skills he insisted were essential for children growing up in the West. Old Jeremiah eventually left his mountain trading post and moved to a small cabin on the Nichols property, becoming something of a grandfather figure to the children, entertaining them with tales of his adventures in the mountains and teaching them the ways of tracking and survival. Hannah never returned to Red Bluff or the farm where she had grown up, but she kept her father's pocket watch and her mother's locket, treasured reminders of the family she had lost. In time, the pain of those memories softened, replaced by the joy of the family she and Ryder had created together. The burned remains of the Morris barn became something of a local legend, the place where Ryder Nichols had freed Hannah James from chains and set fire to the building, an act of defiance against evil that had led to love. Some even claimed that on certain nights, the ghostly glow of flames could be seen on the old Morris property, a reminder of the fire that had forged a bond between two people destined to find each other. As for Ryder and Hannah, they never forgot the circumstances of their meeting or the dangers they had faced together. But with each passing year, those memories were overlaid with newer, happier ones, their children's first steps, birthdays and anniversaries celebrated with friends and neighbors, quiet evenings spent on their porch watching the sunset. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Ryder presented Hannah with a special gift, a silver locket to replace the one that had been her mother's, which she had passed on to their daughter Margaret when she turned 16. Inside the new locket was a tiny painting of the two of them on their wedding day. "To remind you," Ryder said as he fastened it around her neck, "that even the darkest beginnings can lead to the brightest futures." Hannah, her beauty matured but undiminished by the years, touched the locket with reverent fingers. "I never needed reminding of that," she replied softly. "I have you for that, my cowboy who broke chains and burned barns." Ryder smiled at the familiar phrase that had become something of a private joke between them. "And would do it again in a heartbeat," he assured her, taking her hands in his. "I know," Hannah said simply, and in those two words was all the trust and love that had defined their life together. In a West that was slowly becoming less wild, where railroads and telegraph lines were connecting once isolated communities and bringing the modern world ever closer, Ryder and Hannah Nichols remained steadfast in their commitment to each other and to the life they had built from the ashes of violence and fear. And when their children asked, as children do, how they had met and fallen in love, they told the story honestly but carefully, a story of courage and rescue, of chains broken, and a barn burned, of a journey through mountains pursued by dangerous men, and most importantly, of two people who had found in each other the strength to overcome the past and build a future filled with love. It was a story that would be passed down through generations of the Nichols family, a testament to the enduring power of love and the unbreakable spirit of those who had settled the American West, not just the men who drove cattle and built ranches, but the women who stood beside them, equal partners in creating homes and lives in a land that demanded courage and resilience from all who sought to tame it. And at the heart of that story, always, was the image of a barn in flames and a woman freed from chains, walking into the night beside the man who had risked everything to save her, a powerful symbol of liberation and the beginning of a love that would last a lifetime.